Tomorrow morning here at 9 a.m. We'll have the pleasure now to welcome two colleagues who will say a couple of words to close the day today. And after that, as you very much know, you are all invited to a nice cocktail drink just here. So make sure you also stay with us. So I will first give the floor to Ambassador Jürg Lauber, the permanent representative of Switzerland here to the UN. Please, a round of applause for Jürg. Welcome, Ambassador.
Thank you so much. No. I absolutely not deserve the applause. Thank you so much. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to say a few words. I don't deserve it because I only was in and out briefly in the program today. But I really want to congratulate CCHN for this event, for this summit, all the participants. I'd like to say that Switzerland believed in this idea from the beginning. Peter Maurer, I saw here. I remember it's quite a few years. I'm not going to go into exact numbers, but it's been a few years. I had a chance to be at some points observer, sometimes involved. This is a fantastic story, really a success story. Switzerland, we are very happy to be a supporter. I said at lunch already, this idea or this concept or this expression, the community of practice, it's something I'm still not totally sure if I myself understand what it implies, but I found it super attractive, this idea of bringing people together around an issue from different walks of life and professional categories and to exchange ideas, exchange practices, also listen to each other, getting to different perspectives. And CCHA for me is the best example of how this can be done successfully. And I want to really congratulate you on that. I also like to think that Geneva is a particularly good place to do that. I like to think that in Geneva, we have so many issues we're dealing with and so many different actors. You know, we have the permanent missions representative of the governments. We have the international organizations where the government meet and the people who work in the organizations. We have civil society. We have science, academia, the private sector. It should be done more. So I can only encourage you to please continue on your path and share your practice with others as well. There is definitely need to also do similar things, create other communities of practice with regard to other issues. Also, of course, I'm from the sub-Geneva category of diplomats. We had this discussion today, what are diplomats doing, what are frontline negotiators doing, and how much we can learn from each other. And while you are advancing on this, I think we should together maybe consider what more we can do to work together. Some issues that came up in the discussion this afternoon is we have certain practices that can be useful for frontline negotiators. They have certain practices that can be useful for diplomats. There is complementarity, for instance, when we need to, in a conflict situation, we often, diplomats and frontline negotiators, move in the same theater of conflict, but we talk to different people. But we all together need to talk to every party involved, every group involved in a conflict, and we should exchange with each other about what are the messages you're giving, what are the experiences you are making. We also have different access to different categories of information. Here again, I think exchanging with each other, how do you perceive the conflict? What is your perspective? Get better informed about the conflict and being better able to address it on the front line to ensure humanitarian access, but also what the diplomat's job is, trying to mediate a conflict. That's maybe even more difficult. I think we also need to be clear where we are different, and we need to respect each other's specificity and borders. A lot of talk about common but differentiated responsibility. It's a concept that's not always liked or sometimes contested, but in a way it goes into that direction. There are things frontline negotiators need to do, can do, that diplomats cannot do, and vice versa, and we should do things not necessarily try to do what the others do. So let's try to see how we can bring these groups even better together, where there are areas of complementarity, where we can learn from each other, but also be respectful of our different roles. And with that, I really want to thank you again for this event and encourage you to continue. But I also obviously don't want to miss the opportunity. You have a lot of these frontline negotiators, frontline humanitarian staff workers here. These are particularly terrible, risky times for people working in the front lines and in the specific situations of conflict. And through CCHA and through all of you who are here, who are representing groups, organizations who work in the field, who work in situations of conflict, express my gratitude and my huge respect and admiration for all the work that is being done in the conflict. You know, sometimes we are complaining here in Geneva how tough it is to go from one meeting to another, but you know, life is not so bad in a city like Geneva. But you are working on the front line. That's where the real work is being done. Thank you very much for that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Lauber. Thank you also for all the support Switzerland has been providing, as you say, from the inception of this project. And now it's my pleasure to welcome Pierre Kra, the Director General of the ICRC, as you know, one of the founding partners of the CCHN and host of the CCHN. Welcome, Pierre. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much, Joël. Colleagues, friends, it's very nice to be here, and I really want to first of all congratulate CCHN for the energy and for the journey, actually, which has been remarkable since the initial initiative. And Peter, we do welcome you also. It's good to see you. That was taken a number of years ago to create this community. And why is it actually so important that we have moments like this to share practice, to think together about what humanitarian negotiations are about? Well, first of all, it's important because the world is in a sad state. The polarization and level of conflict around us in so many parts of the world is deeply preoccupying. And one of the first things that comes to my mind that I find very striking after having spent now 30 years working in these environments is that collectively, as humankind, we behave as if wars were inevitable. We always go through phases where conflict is an idealized form. It's reflected on in many of the coverage that we see about it, how human beings speak about it. We can be forgiven at times for thinking that wars are inevitable when we think back to what we studied, all of us, I presume, in different forms in our school years and university years. Yes, we read many history books where it was mostly focused on the battles and the names of famous generals, and less on what is at the heart of what the ICRC and many of you stand for in this room, which is the human dimensions of conflicts. We are not about reciting the acronyms and changing acronyms of armed groups on the battlefield. We are not about focusing on just the new and becoming, being in awe of the new methods and means of warfare that are being deployed on the battlefield. We're not even about the change of front lines. We are about what impacts human beings. Wars are about this terrifying moment where you are in a village, your village, and an armed group approaches your village, appears on the hill across, and you have just a few minutes to decide what belongings you will take with you. Photographs, important documents, some memorable belongings of the family. And just at the moment when you're picking up those belongings, you remember that you have one of your children on the school grounds a few kilometers away, and you're not sure that you will reach that place in time to be able to flee together, united as a family. Armed conflicts are also about this moment where you are led blindfolded down a cold detention corridor, hearing the screams of ill-treated people in neighboring cells. Armed conflicts is about this heartbreaking experience that we have all gone through in the humanitarian field of a family that does not know what has happened to a close relative, It's the moment somebody comes and knocks at your door and tells you that the last thing that was seen of a brother of yours or a sister of yours or your father or your mother is that the person was forced into an unmarked vehicle that sped away, never to be heard of again, despite all the efforts that we might engage in collectively. And for many, that is an experience that is not for a few days and weeks. It's often a heartbreaking experience that lasts a whole lifetime. That's what armed conflicts are about. And when we see the state of the world today, I'm also always struck by the fact that most of you and most of us are working in conflicts of long duration. So when we on front lines, and you today on the front lines of these difficult contexts, hear armed groups, politicians around the world, stating that we will never talk to the other side, are we impressed? No, because in the end, there is always a time when you will talk again to the other side, because there is no exit from the conflict dynamics unless one talks. And so in the humanitarian sector, in the practice of humanitarian dialogue, of the negotiations that we lead, it's also to preserve the possibility of a wider resumption of dialogue between parties. When, in the case of the ICRC, we are on the front line as a neutral intermediary, facilitating either the release of prisoners or the exchange of the transfer of mortal remains from two sides, it is because it preserves this minimum possibility that a dialogue will resume, because you have just given enough impetus and incentive to two opposing sides that everything indeed separates at that moment to be in communication with one another. So to believe in the strength of dialogue, of negotiations, of communication is actually to believe in what makes it courageous to be a humanitarian worker. And we have to take those messages to the wider international setting. There are also state representatives in this room, and we're immensely grateful for the support that has been given by states to this important initiative. But I say, when we look at what is happening in today's divided world, when we know how difficult it is to create cohesion and commonality of action, this is one of the reasons why we are for so long in all of these armed conflicts. The ICRC, with many of you, has been present for decades in most of the average armed conflicts. So also the energies that we have to invest, that you are investing every day, every week, every year, in trying to resolve these. It was never the idea that we as humanitarians should be 75 years in the context of Israel and Palestine. It was never the idea that we should be for 45 years in Afghanistan. It was never the idea that we should be for 50 in Colombia or elsewhere. So we are there because we believe in the importance of the human gesture, the humanitarian negotiation, and you're carrying this. But we also have to say honestly that we're often very exhausted at the human cost. And we must also bring our modest voices and contributions to the messaging that makes political action responsible. We need more action on prevention of armed conflicts. We need more action on the resolution of armed conflicts. We need belief in the fact that it's not only the humanitarian negotiations, we need the political dialogue to take place. And the practice that you're developing in the humanitarian, the importance of CCHN in that regard, in building a commonality of, and a space where the dialogue takes place to exchange practices, to build a basis for common methodologies, for a common grammar, a common language when it comes to frontline negotiations, should also what gives us confidence to raise issues and influence the political circumstances, not because we're political actors. Certainly the ICRC is not a political actor, and we don't have the role to play in that, but what we do have as a responsibility is to bring every day the human costs of the ongoing, never-ending armed conflicts to the attention of decision makers. That we do because otherwise we're just year after year seeing the same horrors unfold around us. And so I think that to have this community, and the ICRC is proud not only to have been at the initiation of it, to have been a co-founder, to be today an active participant, but to have, as part of your wide community, hundreds of our own colleagues engaged, involved, participating. And the point that I also see in this room that is a very important reflection about where humanitarian action is going is that The world has changed in so many profound ways. We know about the dialogue that is taking place on localization of aid, on decolonization of aid, on new paradigms that are emerging, and I felt that strongly last year when I had the honor to work on developing the new institutional strategy of the ICRC. We had conversations with many actors in Latin America, in Europe, in Africa, the Middle East and Asia, from academic circles, humanitarian organizations and others. And as we were consulting, one message came back very strongly. ICRC, if you don't see the trends that are changing in terms of our expectations of how humanitarian work should develop in coming years, you will miss a fundamental transformation. If you're not listening to that, so the meetings that you have, the exchanges, the diversity visible in this room, that is also a diversity we want to embrace in ICRC, because we believe strongly that only by being diverse internally in the organization can we be in intelligent communications and interactions with all of the perspectives that exist today and will exist tomorrow about the future of humanitarian action. So congratulations, first of all, on what this community brings, on the practices that it shapes, but also let us be very, very clear about the need to listen to one another about where the world is going, because again, it is a preoccupying set of developments that we're facing. We face grave risks on the horizon, and we have to be very tuned and very much listening to one another. So congratulations on this event, Joel, also on bringing it about. Wishing you an excellent continuation, and Jörg, it was very nice to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierre, for closing this first day with so much experience and wisdom. And with these beautiful words, I think we can close the day, and now inviting you to join us for a cocktail and more time to meet and to exchange. Thank you very much to all of you for today. Thank you.